The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 12. Each chime hit the air like a hammer against cold iron. Elias stood in the center of the study, the vibration of the final stroke still humming in the floorboards beneath his feet. He waited for the echo to die, but the silence that followed was heavier, pressing against the walls of the house. He turned his attention to the mahogany desk. It was anchored by years of dust and neglect. He braced his heels against the grain of the floor and pushed. The wood groaned, a long protesting sound that scraped across the floor, leaving a jagged trail in the grime. He shoved harder until the desk cleared the center of the room, revealing a single, mismatched floorboard. It sat slightly lower than the rest, held by rusted nails that had long since surrendered their grip. Elias knelt. His fingers traced the edge of the wood, finding the gap where the iron screwdriver could bite. He jammed the tool into the crevice and leaned his weight into the handle. The wood resisted, then gave way with a sharp, splintering crack. Elias reached into the hollow space. His hand brushed against something cold and hard before his fingers closed around a leather-bound object. He pulled it into the light. It was a journal, its surface worn smooth by time, the leather cracked and dry. Beside it lay a single silver coin, tarnished to a dull gray. He set the coin on the floor. It made no sound as it touched the wood. He opened the journal. The pages were brittle, threatening to crumble under his touch. He flipped to the final entry. The ink was faded, barely visible against the yellowed paper, but the date was unmistakable. It was exactly 30 years ago today. He traced the numbers with his thumb, the ink smearing slightly under the pressure. The coincidence was not a matter of chance. It was a marker. He looked at the coin again, noting the strange, jagged symbols etched into its face. The air in the study felt thinner, as if the room itself were holding its breath. He realized then that the house had been waiting for this moment. He gripped the journal tightly, his knuckles turning white, and prepared to read. The ink on the page seemed to vibrate under the dim light of the study. Elias leaned closer, his eyes scanning the faded script, when a sound fractured the silence. It was a sharp, distinct snap of wood from the hallway. Not the house settling, not the wind. It was the weight of a foot pressing down on a loose board. Elias froze. The journal slipped from his fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud. He did not turn his head. He held his breath, his chest tight, listening to the rhythmic, heavy silence that followed the creak. Another step. Closer now. The intruder was moving with deliberate, measured intent toward the study door. Elias scanned the room, his gaze locking onto the iron poker resting against the cold stone of the fireplace. He lunged for it, his fingers closing around the metal. It was heavy, biting into his palm. He stood, his muscles coiled, and turned to face the entrance. The brass handle of the door began to rotate. It moved slowly, a smooth, grinding motion that signaled the latch was disengaging. Elias took a step forward, the iron poker raised, his knuckles white against the dark metal. Elias did not wait for the door to open. He lunged forward, his boots skidding on the floorboards as he threw his entire weight against the heavy oak. The wood groaned under the impact. He slammed his shoulder into the frame, feeling the solid resistance of the door against his body. Just as he shoved his weight into the wood, a shadow flickered across the frosted glass panel, a dark, distorted shape that vanished as quickly as it had appeared. He reached for the bolt with his free hand, his fingers fumbling in the dark until they found the cold iron. He slid it into place with a sharp, metallic snap. He stood there, chest heaving, listening to the silence on the other side. Then, the sound began. It was not a knock. It was not a kick. It was the rhythmic, deliberate dragging of fingernails against the grain of the oak. The sound was thin, sharp, and persistent, moving slowly across the surface of the door. Elias pressed his ear against the wood, his breath hitching as the scratching continued. A steady, grating noise that seemed to vibrate through the very structure of the house. He backed away, his eyes locked on the door, watching as the wood shuddered under the pressure of the unseen force outside. The scratching did not stop. The scratching at the door grew sharper, a frantic, rhythmic scraping that threatened to splinter the oak. Elias turned his back on the sound, his boots pounding against the floorboards as he retreated to the mahogany desk. He fumbled in his palm, his fingers slick with sweat, until he felt the cold, hard edge of the tarnished silver coin. He dropped to his knees, his eyes scanning the dust-covered wood beneath the desk. There, a small, circular indentation sat waiting. He pressed the coin into the hollow. It fit with a sickening, perfect precision. A deep, grinding sound erupted from beneath the floor. The entire room began to shudder. Dust rained from the ceiling, coating his hair and shoulders. The floorboards beneath the desk groaned, then shifted, revealing a staircase of dark, slick stone descending into a throat of absolute blackness. The vibration intensified, shaking the walls. Elias gripped the edge of the desk, his knuckles white as the staircase stabilized. The scratching at the door stopped abruptly. Elias grabbed the lantern from the desk and plunged into the darkness. The air at the bottom of the stairs tasted of wet stone and ancient rot. He held the lantern high, the flame sputtering against the oppressive dampness. The light caught a surface ahead, reflecting back in a dull gray shimmer. He stepped forward, his boots crunching on loose gravel. It was a wall, not of stone, but of paper. Thousands of photographs were pinned to the masonry, overlapping in a chaotic, suffocating mosaic. Elias leaned in, his breath hitching in his throat. Every image was of him. There he was as a child, sitting on the porch. There he was at 20, sleeping in his bed. There he was yesterday, standing in this very study. He traced the edge of a frame with a trembling finger. The paper was warm to the touch. He scanned the angles, some from high above the trees, some from beneath the floorboards, some from inside the walls themselves. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He had never been alone, not for a single day, not for a single hour. The panic surged, cold and sharp, rising from his stomach to his chest. He backed away, the lantern swinging wildly, casting long, distorted shadows. The silence in the cellar shattered. Above him, the study door groaned under a sudden, violent impact. Wood splintered, the sound echoing down the stone staircase like a gunshot. Elias spun around, his heart hammering against his ribs. The doorframe gave way with a final, sickening crack. Heavy, deliberate boots thudded onto the cellar floor, each step measured and slow. The sound vibrated through the damp stone, growing louder with every passing second. Elias scrambled backward, his lantern swinging wildly, casting frantic light across the wall of his own captured moments. He had to move. He turned and sprinted toward the back of the cellar, his boots slipping on the slick, uneven floor. He reached the rear wall and saw it, a small, rusted ventilation grate set into the foundation. It was his only path. He dropped the lantern, the flame dying as it hit the ground, and lunged for the metal. He jammed his fingers into the gaps, pulling until his skin tore, but the iron held fast. The boots were closer now, the rhythm steady and relentless. Elias shoved his shoulder through the gap and tumbled into the suffocating dark of the ventilation shaft. The space was barely wide enough for his chest. He pulled himself forward by his elbows, the rough stone biting into his skin with every inch of progress. Dust choked his lungs, thick and metallic. Behind him, the heavy, rhythmic thud of boots continued, now muffled by the thick foundation walls. He did not look back. He could not afford the momentum loss. The tunnel narrowed sharply, forcing him to press his face against the cold, damp floor. He exhaled fully, collapsing his ribs to squeeze through. His palms scraped against sharp gravel, leaving streaks of blood on the stone. He pushed, his muscles screaming in protest, until his fingers brushed against something cool and smooth. He clawed forward, ignoring the fire in his shoulders. And suddenly, the darkness ahead broke. A sliver of pale silver moonlight cut across the tunnel floor. He reached the end of the shaft, the air shifting from stale, trapped earth to the sharp, clean scent of the night. He was almost out. Elias shoved his final weight against the iron grate and tumbled outward, landing hard on the wet, uneven grass of the garden. The sudden expanse of the night air hit him like a physical blow. He scrambled to his feet, his legs shaking, and spun around to face the house. Every window was a dead, black eye. The front door stood wide open, swaying rhythmically in the wind, a dark mouth waiting in the silence. There was no sign of movement, yet the weight of the pursuit pressed against his back, an invisible pressure that demanded he run. He looked down at his right hand. His palm was torn and slick with blood, yet his fingers remained locked tight around the tarnished silver coin. He did not wait to see if the pursuer would emerge. He turned his back on the house and sprinted toward the wall of trees marking the edge of the property. The grass was slick with dew, pulling at his boots, but he pushed forward, his breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. He reached the first line of the forest, the shadows of the pines stretching out to meet him like reaching hands. He plunged into the thicket, the branches whipping against his face, and kept moving until the house was nothing more than a memory behind him. He did not look back again. He kept his grip on the coin, his knuckles white, and vanished into the deep, silent dark of the woods.